Okay, let us kick off this webinar. Hi all, welcome to this ITC Infotech fireside chat. And we have a really global audience today. We have folks from all parts of the globe. We have folks from Asia Pacific, India, Dubai, Middle East, Europe, UK, and even East Coast of US. It is quite early for them, but still, a few of our clients who joined from that part of the world as well. And it is a wide sort of variety of backgrounds as well. I mean, in terms of the participants, we have folks from banks, building societies, analysts. Some of the analysts have joined, and as well as product and platform vendors as well. My name is Ranjit Ranadhiran, and I lead the banking capability build at ITC Infotech. I've been in this financial services industry for close to 20 years. So what are we going to talk about today? So I'm sure you'll all agree that COVID-19 has changed the whole world, and it is, and digital transformation has come to the forefront, not just for banking, but for all industries, right? And while banking in general, was thought to be reasonably ahead of other industries when it comes to digitization, there are challenges, and we will speak about some of these as we go through the fireside chat. So banks, building societies, and even banking solution providers, will not only need to survive the COVID sort of response during these weeks and months, they should also ensure that they're better prepared for the new normal. And you're hearing this new normal quite a lot nowadays, not just for banking, but for all industries. What is going to be the new normal? How things are going to be after COVID? The last 4 or 6 weeks, I think the immediate response of the banking ecosystem in general, whether it is a bank or vendors, it has been to quickly bring in interventions to react and respond to the COVID, right? And some of them may end up being the new normal and change the landscape forever. We hope to dig deep into some of these concepts. And joining me today is Karthik Shivprakasham from MyExceed. Karthik is a seasoned banking and financial services professional. He has around more than 20 years of experience in digital transformation and product strategy and product development and mobile development and some of the digital aspects as well. He is Vice President for Product Strategy and Business Development at IXC Technologies. And IXC, I'm sure you all know, are a fintech, industry-leading fintech focusing on banking and financial services. Karthik and I hope to have a candid discussion today on impact of COVID on banking in general, the industry's response to the lockdown, and some of the issues and challenges that are in front of us as part of the banking ecosystem. And we'll try and answer some of the questions that you may have, and we'll also debate and see, whether it is going to sort of create a new normal for banking in any way, and what could that be? During the conversation today, we'll have a few polls, audience polls, to keep it lively and engaged. And also we'll have opportunity to ask questions. So as and when during a chat, if you have any questions, make sure you pop it into the platform, and we will try and pick a few of the questions at the end when we have time. So Karthik, welcome to this edition of ITC Infotech Fireside Chat. Really happy to have you with us today.
Thanks Ranjit, and very happy to be here. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everyone making the time to join us.
So Karthik, really mixed views on banking, isn't it? So in terms, initially when this whole response and the lockdown happened, there was a view that banking potentially is not impacted or will not be impacted, right? Some of the other industry sectors, like travel and hospitality, for example, were severely impacted, the airlines and so on and so forth. Because banking, as an utility provider, they're the heart of the economy. They need to keep the economy moving. The BAU services are going on, the payments are coming in, transaction getting processed. Nothing is disrupted at the face of it. And on the other hand, several tier one banks, including Lloyds in the UK, Bank of America, Mashreq, Westpac, to name a few, they reported significant fall in profits. And we know that is primarily on account of provisioning for bad loans. But there are still reports of huge impact on customers and colleagues, right? So there are reports that customers are unable to avail some critical services, branches being closed, staff are working remotely, they are in isolation. And I'm sure that this will continue to cause some challenges to the financial services industry in general. So because they not only need to do the BAU aspects, but also work with governments to make sure that the more needy and most vulnerable, part of our society, whether it is small businesses who are about to go bust, or old and people who need a lot of support, they get their economic benefits and monetary benefits in a timely fashion. So in summary, I feel that banks were better prepared for COVID potentially compared to other sectors, but they are still impacted. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree, Ranjit. It's, while a lot of banks have been, doing some sort of digital projects, digital transformation projects over the last 2 or 3 years, what has happened is the last few weeks have really accelerated and put digital front and center. Customers are not able to come into the branches. Call centers are overloaded. Pretty much the entire bank staff is remote, so they are now digital users, if you will, of various back office systems. A combination of all these issues, right? Customers forced to do everything self-service, call centers overwhelmed, back office staff working remotely. Uh, Everything has now become a digital transaction. Every interaction in a banking system is now digital first, and that's forcing banks to do things which have taken months in a matter of weeks.
Right. And in fact, it's quite interesting. So even leading to the actual pandemic, we were engaged with a number of industry analysts and Forrester, to name a few, and they've done some interesting surveys towards beginning of the year. And what you see is one of the surveys they did globally, and I think it's quite interesting what the findings were. So only 14% of banks and financial services institutions believe that they have the right CX in place, right? So it's all about CX and EX nowadays. What kind of experiences you can give the customers, and many of them have not even started the journey, right? Which to me was quite surprising, and 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 as they say, and as we also believe, I also strongly believe this is the right time. So instead of reacting and being in the sort of a panic and wait and watch, weathering the storm kind of mode, this is a time for decisive action, right? Banks should try and bolster their digital capabilities and see this more of an opportunity to transform and differentiate.
Absolutely. Across the world, pretty much we see the same thing in all our clients. Everyone's looking at accelerating their move to digital. So we are seeing significant increase in digital transaction volumes across all our apps. So yeah, this is the perfect time to use this crisis as an opportunity to do some of the things which banks always wanted to do, but either didn't find the time or the budget.
Or they were always, always discretionary spend, isn't it?
Exactly. And what do you see in the UK or Europe market? I mean, do you see in terms of reaction to COVID, how banks are looking at their digital initiatives now in this new context?
So I can try. Okay, that's an interesting one. So let me break it up into two dimensions. Um, so my view is that across banks and building societies in general, potentially the impact on regular transaction might be quite low, right? I mean, I can speak as a banking customer, and who use regular banking services. I'm not really impacted, right? I mean, the salary comes in and direct debit goes out, and it is working like a dream, right? I mean, so robust that it is so seamless. I mean, those are like really strong capabilities that has been forged by the ecosystem, at least in the UK, the payments network, right? I mean, that is working like a well-oiled machine, so no impact there. But branches are closed; they're operating in a limited way, and there are interestingly a lot of back office staffing issues, right? Because the staff going off sick, they're unable to access all systems because some of them are quite old legacy systems which cannot be accessed remotely in an effective manner, right? Some are like socket connections. It is very prone to network and bandwidth issues. And as you rightly said, even call centers are buckling due to this, unprecedented volumes. Unprecedented again is a word that you hear quite often nowadays. And a new normal, unprecedented. Unprecedented, I think, is the most used word of this year. Now, So the call volumes are going up. Digital channels are seeing record-breaking volumes, right? Because everybody is transacting on digital channels, and some are tumbling, right? They're buckling under the pressure. The sheer amount of transactions hitting them is again unexpected. So the normal transactions, I believe, for if you're a banking customer, definitely not impacted. You're able to transact and do your stuff. But some very key transactions which are not a normal transaction. For example, one example I can think of from a UK context is mortgage transaction. And what I'm hearing from the market is that a lot of mortgage transactions are at risk because the lenders are not able to act on, say, completion fund requests from the conveyancers. Now, traditionally in the UK market, there is a conveyancing system wherein the solicitors, the buyer's solicitor deals with the bank, right? So the buyer solicitor sends an instruction for releasing the funds to the bank, and they use fax. Can you believe it? They use fax to send the instruction, and with the bank being closed, there's nobody out there to receive the fax. And once you get the fax, you need to put it through a payment system, and everything is broken. So a lot of people are having anxiety that the mortgage transactions are stuck. But there are more such examples. But I'm very curious to see what our global audience feel on this today. So let us do a quick audience poll to see what the views are. And please, to the audience, please click on the option that you believe is most relevant. The poll will appear. It will remain for 55 seconds or so, and request you to select the option that you think is relevant. So Karthik, these are like potentially the main ones, isn't it? These are the areas.
Exactly. Yeah. These are pretty much all the three big areas where folks see impact during this lockdown.
It'll be interesting to see. Depending upon the geography and the geos, we'll get a very mixed response, is my view. But traditionally, at least in the advanced markets, the customer service aspects, the self-servicing aspects through digital and mobile and options were pretty mature, and the challenges are mostly in the back office. But let us see, what comes out. Oh, big surprise, right? Absolutely.
It is, but on the other hand, it's also kind of not much of a surprise, simply because most investments in digital was for the customer really. So just like in your own example, I know you're getting a big fat salary every month, and and there's been no uh, to that. So just like you said, customers were largely okay because of these investments over the last 8 to 10 years, right? Pretty much every bank you can think of, I'm sure has a customer, either a mobile banking for customers or a desktop internet banking, right? Whereas a lot of them are probably still running on 20, 30-year-old core banking systems, some still on client server technology where you physically have to be in the building logged in to do uh, whatever sort of workflow task that they do, right? So
Right.
that's where I think we see this big number, and we'll talk about this a little more, but
Yeah.
it's kind of almost
Yeah.
half the audience feel the back office is where the biggest impact is.
Even call center, right? If you look at the relative sort of responses we have received, it appears to me that the customer self service is potentially a bit more okay, but call center and back office has definitely been impacted. It is quite interesting. Now, so definitely there is an impact, right? So I think we have sort of established that there is an impact. There's impact on customer. There's impact on employees, profitability. Issues are there. Let us now move on to the sort of the second part of this sort of chat. So in terms of interventions and what could be the various solutions and options that bank might have, both in terms of sort of surviving COVID, mitigating the issues and transitioning into a sort of a BAU and probably pivoting into a digital first, right? So we need to look at two aspects here, right? One is a rapid response that banks and building societies and institutions need to do for COVID-induced challenges, and some have successfully implemented interventions as well. We'll speak about that as well. And second aspect is how to future-proof, right? In the unfortunate scenario, that something like that, God forbid, but if it all happens again, we have it is bulletproof, and things can function in the right way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So obviously the primary challenge, right now is obviously to help customers who are struggling. A lot of banks, a lot of governments have come out with some kind of a relief program, giving businesses small loans or debt relief and that sort of thing. So the immediate need is to make sure that happens smoothly, whether launching a new application for loans or some sort of a relief program. So that's and the other aspect of that is to obviously ensure that your staff can continue working remotely. And longer term, there are two broad options, right? So one is re-engineer their legacy platforms, which is obviously going to be a very time-consuming and expensive proposition. And the other option is to do this by building modern applications, standalone, that's very loosely coupled to your core systems and deployed primarily on the cloud, which kind of helps the situation and makes you kind of future proof, right? So whether it's offering newer services or newer journeys to both your customers and your staff, uh, or surviving these difficult times in terms of remote work and shutdowns and so on. So
But do you think there's a right time for I completely get it, right? So there is a here and now piece and the long term piece, right? So do you think that um, is the right time for banks and building societies to look at missing pieces, whether it is digital servicing or even top tech, like NLP engines, AI, ML, customer interaction, colleague experience, right? Is it a right time to sort of embark on a full-fledged digital transformation?
Absolutely. There are, in terms of priorities, what we're saying is there are probably the top three priorities we would say is one is onboarding across consumer or corporate banking, where onboarding typically tends to be a very high touch, highly interactive transaction. So, there is
So,
document
so,
exchange,
sorry, Karthik. So onboarding is all about, client acquisition, right? Getting those customers.
client acquisition, or if for an existing client, new product, selling a mortgage to a client or selling a new loan to a client. Right? Typically, there is a lot of documentation, a lot of signatures, KYC, where somebody has to walk into a branch to give an ID or a passport. So generally, the onboarding tends to be a very high touch transaction. So automating that end to end, that's one area. And the other area, like you rightly said, is digitizing back office processes. With the ability, giving the users your bank staff the ability to do any transaction anywhere, right? Be it going to a manager for an approval or some kind of a risk or compliance transaction. These transactions have got to be digitized as well. So just a couple of real life examples. India Post Bank, which is a client of ours, they opened almost like 20 million accounts close to over the last 18 months since they launched, and uh, the last 2 or 3 weeks during this lockdown, they are hitting hundreds of thousands of transactions. They've seen like a 3x increase in digital transactions. And on the other end, in corporate banking, a large global bank has digitized the entire corporate account onboarding process, right? So what used to take weeks is now done under 2 days. And when they say 2 days, it's everything from the minute the client requests a new account to the client having an account number and documents signed and doing transactions, through his online channel. So that's the level of digitization that we're talking about.
And traditionally, corporate, so retail has been quite mature in the onboarding, at least in advanced market in the UK. There are fintechs, who claim to sort of, open an account less than 3 minutes and so on. So I think that was less of a challenge for retail customers. But what you mentioned about corporate and SME onboarding is really interesting, because
Absolutely.
traditionally, if you need a credit line or something, you call your RM, you have face-to-face meeting, share your sort of, turnover and other sort of documentation. So huge amount of documentation and stuff as well. So it's quite interesting to see
Absolutely
that.
right. So exactly. So it's not just you giving a very good app which can do all this for your corporate client. You should also enable your relationship manager, your front office managers with an app where the minute they get a request from the client, and today everybody's sitting at their homes, So when they get a request from their corporate client, they can service or respond to that request right away. First of all, it's got to be a simple, easy to use experience, which will work anywhere on their phones or remote desktops. Uh, and the underlying processes, right? Using things like uh, OCR or NLP or chatbots, and that takes the manual touch points away from the journey. And even with Absolute, we've got like almost 3 or 4 big banks now globally using us for their end-to-end corporate onboarding.
Right. So I think with some of these new models out there, I think the cloud SaaS models out there, I think, and these are not really complex time consuming. This can and no significant upfront investments as well. So I know that cash flow might be an issue at this moment. So this can be done quite easily. I'm just conscious of time. We have 8 minutes. So okay, let us crack on. We need to give.
And just to for the folks on the phone, feel free to start shooting questions, or even if you have a comment, just
Put it on the
type it in the chat window, and we can pick it up.
Right. So I think we established that a lot of customer facing channels, I think is more or less stable, but I think when you go to, but still I'm curious to hear what kind of real life scenarios that you're currently working on. I know that you're working with a number of, cases right now.
Yeah. So we launched a COVID loan app, which is a simple app where a client can just come and answer a few questions and apply for either debt relief or the bailout money that different governments have offered. So in the UK, we're working with a high street bank to enable their CBILS loans. Again, the trick was not to go and uh, do an invasive change in their loans processor or their backend system, but have a small, simple application. And we stood it up in a matter of days, deployed on the bank's website, and they could start up receiving applications and processing these applications. So a lot of banks are taking these steps where they kind of deploy these quick, easy to do solutions. And what used to happen in months, you don't have that luxury anymore. So you're doing it like in a matter of days and weeks. And there are tools available, and there are ways to do this. These kind of launch these kind of solutions.
Right. And even the mortgage problem that I mentioned at the beginning of the chat, right? It could be a perfect use case wherein we can, combine a lot of technologies out there like RPA, a top-notch digital experience solution. So basically abstracting the backend systems, giving a top-notch experience to the employees, and creating a sort of automation and bot workers in the background to stitch it all together. I think is going to be, is pretty straightforward to do. So there is an immediate so coming back to the second part of the conversation, there's immediate response, there is a long-term planning, but let us try and find out, let us get the sense from the audience to see how the COVID experiences are influencing the thinking in terms of what they need to do or what the banking industry need to do. We'll do a quick poll to see what the audience thinks. It'll be very interesting to see the practitioner's view. The poll will now appear on a screen, and let us see, what do we get out of this. So this is reading from the problems out there, and what kind of interventions are immediately needed, right, in the industry. And again, we spoke about all of this in detail. So where are you sort of? Where is your head at? Karthik, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Sorry.
I was just asking, do you have any, where is your head at, in terms of?
My guess would be legacy modernization would be way down the list, because again, those tend to be expensive and time consuming, and digital transformation probably is the most critical now. But
And we're talking,
yeah,
we're talking, yes, right.
Yeah, what do you think, Rajay?
So legacy transformation modernization is zero. I mean, it's surprising because I was expecting to see a few, because what I'm hearing is that at least banks are thinking about modernizing. Anyway, I mean, I think
that's a joke, right? Everybody's been thinking about it. Nobody's been doing it. So That
Right.
probably explains 0%.
Very interesting. So I think the CX aspect is both CX and E. It is both colleagues and customers experience. Just to be clear. So I think that's the right focus area. So I'm just conscious of time. We're just 4 more minutes left. So let us get to the final part. So do you think that whatever banks and institutions are doing right now, will it create the new normal? And it is not just for banks and financial institutions, for everyone in the ecosystem, even product vendors and solutions providers, right? They need to make sure that they are geared up to deliver what the banks are going to expect from them. Barclays CEO Just Stanley has recently said, quote, "The notion of putting 7,000 people in a building may be a thing of the past," right? So there's a movement to small offices, branches taking central stage, remote working become normal, remote help desk will be the standard because centralized hands and feet support may no longer work in a distributed model,
Oh,
right?
definitely. Yeah. So some habits definitely are here to stay. And like I like to joke about this, where we're all in the seventh or eighth week of lockdown, and we all think we can do, haircuts, or we're all professional barbers now. So, so
Absolutely.
some of these habits will stay. So it's like, uh, folks used to certain set of remote working. Banks that were not very forward looking when it comes to cloud deployment are talking about cloud first, simply because they can't get a DBA to install a database in their data center, or they don't even have access to their data center, and so on. So there is uh, an acceleration, if you will, to some of these newer trends, right? Whether it's cloud first, and digital is not like an adjunct transaction. So before, what used to happen was, when a bank launches a new type of a loan or a new product, they used to figure out first the core journey first, and the features of the product in the back office and how they'll service it. And then they'll slap a screen on it on their internet banking or mobile banking. Now it's flipped the other way, where it's digital first, and then they go figure out, what do I need to go support with the bank. So digital is not adjunct anymore. It's right in the middle of it, and that experience will drive more and more investments, and the way banks operate.
Right. Thanks, Adik. I think yeah, completely agree. So I think we have few more minutes left, and we have few questions trickling in. Let us Karthik, let us switch on to a few questions before we conclude. I'm keen that we don't overshoot um, this. So one of the questions I have is, the this is with regards to the COVID interventions. I think you already answered it, but I think the question is, how quickly can some of this be launched? Time is of essence. So if you can just break it up in terms of how did you go about the high street UK example?
Yeah.
How
So
did
so 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 the way we
start to the end, and if you can.
so the way we did is, there are two aspects. One is, how soon can I get the request from the client in a self-service automated way? And like I said, we built like a very simple app, works either on their mobile phone or desktop. Customer comes in, answers a few questions, submits his tax returns, balance sheet, whatever documents. The loan request is accepted. And in the back office, we built a very quick workflow application, right? And again, because a lot of these loans are backed by the guaranteed by the government, there is not a lot of processing needed, and you have a quick KYC API that we call to ensure the customer is the right customer. He's the one who's asking for the loan, and some kind of credit scoring. And we built a quick microservice which will then talk to the core loan system.
So
So
how long
there are
how
two
long did
small
it take?
applications standalone on the cloud, and it could easily bolt on top of their legacy system without having to touch the legacy system and do a lot of work there. Sorry, go ahead.
No. So how long did it take? You mentioned a matter of
So the
days.
whole process took, end to end took less than 2 or 3 weeks. The customer app, we were able to stand it up in a week. So that's the kind of timelines we're talking about.
Right. And everything is cloud enabled, right? So you don't
Yes.
have to
So yeah,
keep changing it,
like I
do that
said,
remotely, and
you have to work from anywhere. So yeah.
fine. So we'll take one more. I think we have time for just one more. We are not enabled all the channel solutions yet. Is it the right time to embark on journey? I think I touched upon this before. So if not kick off, you should definitely start thinking about it, right?
Yes.
Whether what do you like to do in the space? Like Karthik mentioned, either you can standard something lightweight to take care of basic servicing capability, and for all you know, this might end up being the permanent solution if you do it the right way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So I think it's time to conclude. I'm afraid no, we don't have time to pick up any more questions, but we will respond to each one of them through email. So feel free to pop in more questions into the platform. This brings us to the end of this webinar. I really enjoyed the discussion, Karthik. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Likewise, thanks to you. Thanks to
I also thank all our audience member, and it is quite early for some of them who are in East Coast of states. Thanks for joining, and rest of the world as well. Thanks all of you joining us today.
Very late for some folks in Asia, so again, thanks for the time.
Quite late for Asia as well, and I really hope you have some takeaways to ponder. I hope we were able to create some thought process in your head, and you'll take away, and it'll force you to think and act on it. As the session ends, we'll leave you with some short survey and feedback questions, which will sort of pop up automatically, after the session ends. So please do not close your window. Really appreciate if you could give us that feedback. It's really important for us. And finally, before I end, I want to add that we have launched ITC Infotech and IXC both. We have launched several digital interventions across digital experience and help desks solutions for our clients in the last few weeks, and do contact us to do more. So goodbye, and hope to see you again in the next webinar. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Ranjit.
Thanks, Karthik. Bye-bye.